Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MCC. I'm your host, Isaac Mack. Joining me today is Mr. Andre Mikho. Andre is a youth group leader at Our Lady Guardian of Plants Church in Melbourne. He's also soon to be ordained as a sub-deacon. He's immersed himself in church throughout his whole life. Andre's also got a Bachelor of Science where he majored in physics and mathematics, and is now looking to further his studies in theology. Andre, welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Isaac. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, I like you already before talking to you because you've got the surname of my dearly departed grandmother, Mikho. Her name was Rahel Mikho. She was a very sweet woman. So you got extra points for that.
Oh, really? That's good. That's awesome.
Hey, I know you guys just got done with a really good youth event down in Melbourne called Come Home.
Yep.
How did that go down? What was it like?
Yeah, it went good. So what we did was we were originally going to have like a barbecue just to welcome everyone back. And the problem is a lot of the youth were away from, the church. They hadn't been coming to church for a long time. And so we felt as if maybe the youth were, in a sense, lost in their spirituality. So we thought, what better way to bring them back than at first we thought it was just a barbecue. But then when we discussed with the parish priest, he thought we'd have like a convention or a youth day. And so it went for the majority of the day, I think from about 2:30 to about, we said 9 o'clock, but it ended up finishing around 12 o'clock.
Midnight?
Midnight, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
The singing,
it's like an Iraqi wedding.
Exactly right, yeah. The singing and dancing. So yeah, it was good to see all the youth come back and participate, and hopefully we see them again this Saturday at youth.
Awesome. Well, I mean, look, I grew up in Brisbane, and I know I've got friends and family in Sydney as well who would go to these events. But for people that don't, could you tell us like what went down throughout the whole day, like for people that don't haven't experienced something like this?
Oh yeah, 100%. So generally with these sort of events, we try and fit in a mass.
Okay.
So we had a mass and we had a short talk as well. And then what we normally do is we, after the talks, we like split up into different groups. And so that different participants, they don't just come to listen to what we have to say or what the speaker has to say, but they also come and participate and also, contribute as well. So that we listen to them. And we do things like, obviously, barbecues also. Sometimes we had table tennis, volleyball outside. We were going to play dodgeball, but it was a bit cold outside. And just, different. We also had FIFA. We had 2 PlayStations going. And so it was it's
no wonder you can get people to leave.
Sorry?
No wonder you couldn't get people to leave.
Yeah, exactly right. We couldn't get people to, and especially after when they started singing and dancing and it went crazy. They had like the traditional, Iraqi dancing and couldn't get them out of the church.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, obviously that really uplifted, everyone who went along, all the youth and all that stuff, because they'd been away for a while, like all the lockdown.
Well, in Melbourne, here in Melbourne is 8 months. I'm not sure about Sydney, how long you guys were in lockdown, but we were in lockdown for about 8 months on and off. And then the past, I think 2-3 months, it was stage 4. So it was really strict lockdown, but thankfully they're all back.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's good. And I also saw like not so long ago, I think you had a photo with Maher and a few people, and I think Father Joel at a university in Melbourne. Yes. I think you're part of like a Catholic team and helping the students at the uni. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Maher is he's the official chaplain, but what he does is he tends to always call me up and say, Andre, say for example, it'll be like 6:30 in the afternoon and I'm, doing whatever I'm doing. He goes, Andre, can you join in 5 minutes? We've got a Zoom talk. I'm like, what is it? He goes, just join. I just join him. And so I've been joining in with him, a Zoom talk. I always try whenever I had the Tuesdays free. I used to have Tuesdays off. I would try and best as I could to attend. And there is a Catholic society at one of the unis in Melbourne called La Trobe University. And
La Trobe, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, that's right. And we tend to get like a few Catholic students from all ages. Some are students, some are researchers, some are lecturers that come. It's a good vibe and good vibe. And that day that you saw us, we were with Father Joel Pitt. And actually what's interesting about Joel Pitt was he was my Year 8 religion teacher.
No way.
Before he became a priest, he used to yeah, he used to come to school with a motorbike, and we always thought he was a cool teacher and this, that. And then out of nowhere, he just became a priest. And it's always a good story to tell about Father Joel. So yeah, we ended up having a barbecue at his house, and it was fantastic.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Mara, I talked to him about you before, our catch up here, and doing my own research about you. It sounds like, I think you've been involved in church since pretty much you were baptized as a baby, and it all progressed from there. Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah, man. I never really had a break. Sometimes I wish I had a break, but yeah. Well, the thing is, my father is a sub-deacon.
Okay.
So you would know, but for those that are watching, on your YouTube channel that don't know, there's 3 different levels of deacon in our Chaldean parish.
Actually, can you explain that?
Yeah, so there's 3 different levels. I don't know what they're called. I know what they're called, but I'm not going to have a go because I know I'll stuff it up. But there's, first of all, there's like a reader kind of altar server. Then there's a sub-deacon, and then there's the deacon. The Latin rite has the deacon, so just the one deacon, whereas in our Chaldean parish or our Chaldean liturgy, we have 3 different levels. And so my dad was the second. We only have 2 in the Chaldean parish that are the 3rd level, that are like the Latin rite. Yep. And yeah, soon, hopefully, I thought they were going to ordain me as the 1st level because, I'm still trying to learn how to read and write Chaldean. It's so hard it's not easy at all, especially when you're programmed to read English and then you try
I've got some there that the Archbishop put up.
Oh yeah?
That, and I don't know, I'll try to.
Please don't ask me to read it.
Yeah, it's not easy. No,
it's not easy at all, bro. But yeah, slowly. And yeah, so my father is a deacon, and I grew up with my dad. Obviously, our community was smaller back then, so deacons would always be with the priest when they would visit people's houses, and we had two in a sense parishes, one that was in Campbellfield and one that was in Oakley as well, or in the Dandenong region. And a lot of the times he would go with the late Abuna Emmanuel to the Oakley parish once a month and have mass there. And so as a kid, I would go there with him and help my dad because, I had nothing to do at home. So I love my dad, so I always wanted to tag along with him. Before that, we would go to a parish called St. Dominic as well, celebrate mass there, and we'd go to people's houses. And that was from my dad's side. So in terms of my dad, I always had my dad to look up to in terms of him being a deacon. And then on the other side, I had my mum, who was a Saturday school teacher.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so pretty much all my friends, all my brother's friends, everyone knows my mum, and all their parents know my mum. And so on one side, I had my father, who was a deacon. On the other hand, I had my mum, who was a Saturday school teacher. So I kind of had no choice. So even if I wanted not to be, even if I wanted to not be religious, I didn't have a choice. But thankfully, when you grow up, you do, thank your parents that you brought up in such a beautiful faith.
Yeah, we're very blessed, man, especially you. So you wouldn't want to do the wrong thing around your parents.
Exactly, man. I've done that before and it wasn't a good experience. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So what do you enjoy most about being a youth leader?
For me, the most enjoyable thing, or my focus above anything, is always the evangelization of it. Being able to evangelize. For a long time, going to youth group, in my earlier years, I've been going to this particular youth group for about 8 years, maybe 9, almost 9. In my early years, I wouldn't really contribute much. I would always keep the faith to myself. And this is when I was about 16. And I could, honestly say that I was pretty holy for a 16-year-old, but I never really expressed my faith, partly because there was already people there to express it. There was a priest that would attend. There was a couple of leaders that were really intelligent and would explain the faith and, in a sense, speak. But there wasn't a need for me really to speak. But then slowly these leaders started to step down. So I thought to myself, Andre, it's time for you now to break out of your shell. I was a bit, shy growing up, shy and also a bit too humble. And so I learned, Andre, now it's time for you to step up. It's time to change. The church needs you to help these young people. The church needs young people, and the church needs active members. And so that's when I decided, all right, it's time for me to step up. And I was asked many times to be a leader. I probably said no about 300 to 400 times before.
Wow. Who was asking you?
So Maher and a couple of other leaders.
They're persistent.
Yeah, they just kept asking, and they kept giving hints here and there, and I was just
I
like,
think,
no, man.
sorry, I think that's like an Iraqi thing when you they offer you food,
Exactly.
you're not getting out of there unless you
100%,
eat.
man. There is
So
no, you can't say no for an answer, man. And yeah, and
that's good.
well, there was a need, so that's why I thought, yeah. So evangelization is my center focus, and for me is the most enjoyable thing in terms of uh, youth. And to be honest, it's not really youth; they're 18 plus,
Okay.
so they're young adults. And yeah, so
No, that's awesome, dude. Like, I grew up in Brisbane, so I was about 6, 7 years old. We came to Australia from
yeah,
Iraq, and I think similar to you in the beginning, there was not really a community,
yeah,
but that maintained that's still the same today. There's no actual Chaldean community or Syrian community in Brisbane.
yeah,
My parents and a lot of the people, Iraqis in Brisbane, still go to a Lebanese church, the Melkite church there, which we're really thankful and blessed that we could be part of that community. So why I say all that is because part of the reason why I started this podcast was actually to reach not just people within our community, but to celebrate our culture, preserve it, but also to reach people that are outside of our circles.
yeah.
Question for you is that for people who don't have access, to these youth groups and even such a great church like the one in Melbourne, the one in Sydney, where do you think someone who's a little bit sort of outcast from all that, where do you think they could start just to get closer to to their faith, I guess?
So I guess if we were talking about the community in Brisbane, that they would be a bit handicapped in a sense because they don't have that Chaldean parish.
Yeah.
Of course, they can contribute to the groups they have present there. But if we had, say for example, I think soon there'll be a Chaldean priest going to Brisbane. Or I think
Yeah,
already.
my father's petitioning for it.
Oh, he's petitioning for it. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah,
He will not rest until that happens.
100%.
But do you know what I'm saying? Like people even who are non-Chaldean, non-Iraqi, all that stuff, and who
Oh,
and they
okay.
just go to Aussie churches. Like I went to, with the greatest respect, I went to a lot of Australian churches where some I found were phenomenal, uplifting, others were just
Yep.
almost like flatlining.
Yep.
So say there's someone out there who's just by themselves, and
Yep.
what could they do? What would you recommend? Like they just get into the Bible, or they plug in online on stuff.
Well, I mean, they don't necessarily have to be experts. So you don't really necessarily have to be an expert in terms of, running a youth group or starting a youth group. Really, you have to be good with people. That's the first step. And so if you're not good with people, at least get comfortable being, good with people, being able to interact with different types of people. I think the best advice I could give is if you do want to start a youth group, it's really dependent on the priest. So first of all, you need to develop a good relationship with the priest, and present to him the idea of starting a certain group. And once the priest sees that you are willing, and you're not a criminal or anything, and you're faithful, and you got the good intentions to help, either whether if it's a youth or a Bible study or an adults group, so like 30 and over or whatever. Or even if it's young, if it's maybe like 14, 15, 16-year-olds, definitely, obviously with the permission of the priest, and just being involved in the community. So first you have to get involved in the church first, see who the families are, see who their children are. If you want to start a youth group, get to know them, invite them. And it's just a constant inviting. In our youth group, even though our youth group is, is a large number of people attend our youth group, we're always still trying to expand the youth group constantly, non-stop, just trying to expand. So even if you do want to start, you need to have that rhythm of being able to reach out to people and inviting them, and having good character as well. It's important to have good character, because a lot of the time, if people don't like a certain person, it's hard to attend to what they have, to the group that they have. So it's good to be, firstly, humble, second of all, being a good character, and definitely having a good relationship with your priest.
Yeah, nice. Well, my question, I mean, that's some really good points there. My question was more about just people who don't have access to the community, just getting closer to their faith, you know what I mean? Like in terms of that, like I spoke, you know what I mean? But I spoke to a guy had a guy on the show a few weeks back from India, and he converted from Hinduism to Catholicism, and now he
I saw that.
preaches. And
Yeah, I saw that.
Dominic, yeah, he's phenomenal at what he does, and he just, I think, I suppose he was touched by God, and he just kept, going down that direction. But yeah, I mean, I've spoken to people in Brisbane, even down in Adelaide, and people, like I said, outside the communities who, like I said, part of the reason why I started this podcast was for them as well, just so that they could get access to people like yourselves, all our priests as well, and to get some, I suppose, inspiration from that.
Well, I myself was inspired watching your podcast, seeing the different, people in the community and even outside of the community coming and contributing in their own way. It doesn't necessarily have to even be about faith. It can be about the career or any little thing that they do. And I think it's absolutely fun. I was inspired myself now watching the podcast. I think you do a fantastic job interviewing different people.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. But yeah, don't embarrass me on it. More serious question. Like, do you think there's a time where, because I like to also talk about things that a lot of people don't like to talk about as well. Do you think there's a time where people can turn away from the faith? Because we know, again, growing up in Brisbane, now I'm hearing about things that are going on in Sydney and Melbourne that a lot of people don't like to talk about, whether it's the drug addictions, the gambling addictions. There's a really nasty crime that happened in Sydney this week, just a day or two ago. Do you think there's a specific time or something where it's like a I don't know, a dangerous time where people can go one way or another?
So in regards to an age or just in events?
Maybe age or an experience.
For me, yeah.
Sorry, do you find, working with kids at sort of that age and that there is a critical time?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, we do live in a secular world, and especially, for example, like 16, 17, 18-year-olds, in a sense, they're developing their identity. They're coming to know who they are. They see their friends. Some of them don't go to Catholic schools. They're brought up in maybe like a public school, there aren't too many, in a sense, people of the same culture as us, because our culture is very rich and it's very, has like certain morals that, force you to either stay close to the church or at least be an ethical person.
Yeah.
And so growing up in a society where the ethics kind of is diluted in a sense, and obviously faith isn't taken as seriously. I think the young teenage years, but it could be, personally, I realize that it could be any age, even like, for example, early 20s but I definitely agree with you. There's a lot of things that can drift people away from church, whether it be the news. I mean, you watch the news, you see all the different news about certain priests and all these scandals, and then you do hear about the different, the drugs, the murders, and all these things that can discourage people to be religious. And also listening to, obviously, because it is a secular world, everywhere you look, every film you look, it's not in favor of religion. Nothing is in favor of the religion, or especially the Catholic faith. And the Catholic faith is targeted a lot. You could probably say the same for the Orthodox. And so that would 100% discourage any young person, any person rather, and that could trigger them to go away from the church. And actually, I could support that by saying I went through that myself. Growing up, even though I had my father who was really religious, part of the church, my mother who was really religious, part of the church, I grew up obviously listening to different talks and whatnot on YouTube, and I could definitely say I doubted the faith to the point you could say maybe I was at probably even close to being an atheist. And I think everyone.
How old were you then?
I think I was about 17. It was on and off. Do you know what I mean?
It's that age again.
Yeah, it was 17, and then it's kind of like on and off. It's like, and then again when I was about, I think it was 19. It's just listening to different perspectives. Because personally I like to educate myself, and especially in terms of apologetics. And when you go down that, because in order for you to understand apologetics and in order to evangelize and understand what new atheism is and all that kind of stuff, you're going to have to listen to what their arguments are, and sometimes they can really catch you and affect you. So that I'm an example of almost straying away from the faith, not on a very severe level, but on a level of just personal doubt. So if it happened to someone like me who's very involved in the church,
Yeah.
I would not doubt one single bit that everyone, in a sense, all especially young people, would go through something similar.
So what did you do to veer back in?
So here's the thing. So I was always taught that it's okay to doubt, and I 100% agree. It's okay to doubt, but you know what it is when you doubt. But when you keep doubting and doubting and doubting, and you just leave it like a doubt on, and then another layer of doubt, but you never really search for the answer, then you're just gonna get stuck. It's like quicksand. You know, the more you struggle, you're just gonna end up stuck. And then, so what I did was just taking it step by step, doubt something, but not just doubt and then come up with another doubt, but doubt it and search. Exactly right. Search for the answer, find the answer. And the problem is a lot of times people say, go and ask your priest, but some priests are so busy with their parishes that they don't have the time to give you, so when you do go, for example, searching for the answer, it's always good to search in the perspective of one branch. So I recently talked to a lot of young Chaldean youth group members that doubt the faith a lot. And they always ask me, Andre, we find different things on the internet. I always say, like, well, the problem is you got to research, but with the perspective of a certain doctrine. Like if you want to see what the Catholic doctrine is, use Catholic sources. If you want to see what the Orthodox doctrine is, use reliable Orthodox sources. Yeah. Don't just go whatever thing you find when you write Christian theology or whatever. You might get a mixture of Protestants, of mixture of, for example, Seventh-day Adventists or Catholics, and then you'll see that's all mumbled jumbled, and then all of a sudden you're confused because one contradicts the other. But rather focus on one. I'm not trying to be biased and I never try to be biased and say to them, read what the Catholics have to say. I say, choose what you want to hear, which answer you want to hear, and stick to their teachings and their reliable sources. And then once you've learned it, then go on to the Orthodox Church, see what they teach, which is obviously very similar to the Catholic. Then go on to the Christian, because there are so many denominations as Christians, you can get confused and that can stray you away. So that's one thing I did. I stuck to the Chaldean Church, but without being biased, after learning what the Chaldean Church had to say, Catholic Church, I went and studied the Protestant Church, see what they had to say, and also the Orthodox Church. That's one tip that I could give, and that's how I overcame that doubt.
Well, I think you brought up a really good point, and that is to do your research and look beyond what you just read, because the internet, Facebook in particular, it's just and the media is full of misinformation.
100%.
I was honored to go on. A friend of mine who actually is Irish that lives in Poland. Yep. I was on his, and he's got a really popular podcast. So he asked me to go on and just talk about Iraq and talk about the Christians of Iraq and all that stuff. And he actually messaged me only a few days ago saying his parents, who were in their 70s, they couldn't stop listening to what I was talking about. Not because I'm a great speaker, but because they hadn't heard it from that angle.
Exactly.
And they hadn't heard it from, my uncle, who's the Archbishop, who, the Prince of ISIS rang him and told him about the options that all the Christians had in Iraq in 2014. And, that's just an example of actually getting it from the source itself.
Definitely.
The media itself is always, like you said, anti-Catholic in a lot of ways.
Yep.
They're always trying to, I suppose, defame the name. And I've even had friends reach out to me, not only recently, and say, I'm actually looking back at the church now a bit more because I'd gone off it, because I grew up in like a Christian Brothers school in England or all this sort of stuff. And I see the news all the time about all these pedophiles and that. So I'm almost ashamed to go to church, so because they've been consumed by all that crap out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you brought up a really good point of just actually looking beyond what you read, because even a lot of stuff that's on Facebook these days, it's just crap. Like, it's just stuff that people are putting out there. They don't even check where the source comes from.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. I read stuff sometimes of what people post and I go, okay, that makes sense. Let's see where that came from.
Yeah.
And just look beyond. And sometimes it's just there's no actual source. So I just dismiss it straight away.
So what I tell some of the youth is they always ask me, is it good to ask a priest? I say it's good to ask a priest, but more importantly, ask him for the sources, like ask him where to look. Don't necessarily always ask him for the answers, because you have a lot of questions. I say ask him where to find answers and then go from there. And this could be, like you said, it could be with anything. It could be about education, educating yourself in terms of history, politics, global problems and everything. You could apply to anything.
Well, I mean, and I even had my wife always tells me just to calm down and not get too involved online with things. And I do my best. It's not easy. But I remember there was actually a Catholic page on, just as an example to what you're talking about. There was a Catholic page on Facebook, and they supported, I suppose, discrimination against Iraq and Syria and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And they put up this great big post about congratulating Joe Biden, and he's really good, blah, blah. And it just went on and on and on. And I just could not help myself. I said, do you know that this guy supports Planned Parenthood, blah, blah. And I actually put links under there. Yeah. Not conspiracy ones, actual from the websites of the organizations that he supports. Yeah. And I said, what the, bleep are you guys doing, putting this out there when kids can be reading this and thinking that this is the right thing? So exactly. There's so much misinformation out there,
especially on YouTube and social media. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, sure is. So I know you're not a parent, but the fact that you deal with the youth all the time, what do you think a lot of kids need more of in their lives these days?
In terms of their faith, or in terms of just their...
I mean, just would it be like I'm a parent. I've got a 3-year-old kid. He's going to be going, and my wife and I are going to do the best to, bring him up with the right morals, the faith, and everything. But there's a lot of things we have to, I suppose, guard him from and warn him about. But if I'm going to be looking, it's like you give me parental advice, but I know you're not a parent, but what do you see that a lot of the kids need these days more? Yeah. Like, do they need more teachings about the faith, about what the Bible actually means, or do they need just general support in certain ways?
Yeah. So in terms of the faith, 100%. But a lot of the time they need an example. Like if a young teenage boy sees that his father doesn't go to church and absolutely cares nothing about the faith, I mean, why should he? Unless he has, by chance, he has friends. I mean, he's gifted from God that he's got friends that are religious. I don't see any young person, whether it be boy or girl, following on in terms of the footpaths of being faithful. In terms of I think one thing they do need is some career advice, because this is one problem. A lot of the Chaldeans community, Assyrian community, even the Arabic culture are focused on sometimes religion and not so much what really benefits someone in terms of their career, in terms of how to get to uni, what to do at uni, after uni, what is there, that education as well. So it's centered on faith. They go hard on faith, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't do this, don't do that, but they don't give you advice in terms of practical things that you need in life, like for example, what's a loan, what's what's it like, opening up
life advice. So
exactly right,
life advice on
paying bills, exactly. And so what I realized is a lot of kids, they especially from the Chaldean and Assyrian community, or even the Maronites and whatnot, they kind of have to figure that out themselves. So that's one thing they can give, but I don't blame the parents, because obviously these guys are refugees that they come. So they themselves try and work it out. And a lot of the times they ask their children to help them. So in terms of their career, there would need to be that support push there 100%. In terms of their faith, like I said, being that example as a parent and emphasizing the importance of not just going to school, not just, getting good grades. There's more to just getting good grades. Obviously faith is a good aspect. I mean, trying to get some work experience and all that kind of stuff. These are all important things that you could give a young person advice. And I think is in a sense a little bit lacking in the community.
Yeah, it's a great point, because that's ultimately what gets balance in life, when you have an actual purpose.
Yep.
Like you're 100% right. You could be an amazing, I suppose, member of the church, but you're not necessarily doing things in the world, so how do you actually take your
Yeah,
faith and apply it to make a
exactly.
difference in society, so
Exactly.
yeah, that's a great point, and you're 100% right. I mean, this is something I've talked to many people about, the fact that our school system is quite rigid and broke. It doesn't teach people exactly all the things you talked about,
Yeah.
how to manage your finances, how to balance your life, how to take care of yourself health wise, all that stuff. It teaches you to basically study, get grades, and go to university. So there's I suppose the one question I wanted to ask you, but I think you already answered it, is the biggest influences that you've had or role models in your life. So your parents, definitely, yes.
Yeah, my parents.
Anyone outside of that?
Um, uh, that's a good question. I never really sat down and thought about it. Speaking from a faith perspective, you do look at particular saints like, Saint John Paul, that done, phenomenal things. Saints that you pray for, like, Saint Anthony and whatnot. In terms of people like today, I would say, like, yeah, obviously my parents, my grandmother, people around me that are, in a sense, very
Circle.
faithful. Like for example, Mikho would be one, and I've got a lot of other friends in the community that are really, that are phenomenal. These are all people that I look up to, and
awesome.
yeah, I never really thought about it too much about that question, but you caught me off guard.
Good. I'm glad.
Sometimes I influence myself.
That's good. That's awesome. And do you take an interest, like outside of church and all that stuff? Is there something that you enjoy doing?
Yeah, I do. I do a lot of sports. I play a lot of sports, and I do. I love spending time, obviously, with my friends. And yeah, sports is a big one. And
Good sport.
So I play soccer. I've played soccer all my life.
Good.
I used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think 2018. I'd done a few months, and then I stopped because I had a surgery. But now I'm back. Now I'm back in action.
Good man. Good man.
So,
yeah, I did it for.
I'm a big UFC follower. Sorry.
I did it for about 2 years.
Oh, you did? Did you?
Yeah, and I mean, this is the thing. I used to do a little bit of boxing, a little bit of martial arts here and there. Played soccer like you most of my life. And boxing really takes it out of you. You do a couple of rounds of that, you're just pouring sweat.
Yeah.
When I first did jiu-jitsu, my first session, I was, a bit arrogant as you are, and I thought, all right, I'll go for gold, and I went for almost, I don't know, half an hour, 40 minutes straight.
Yeah.
Without a break, and threw up straight away.
That's awesome.
To some people, it looks boring, right? It just people wrestling and whatnot, but the amount of energy
they have, you got no idea. I've been playing soccer all my life, and I could say half an hour of playing soccer is nowhere near equivalent as 1 hour on the floor rolling. And I got an awesome. My coach is awesome. He's really friendly. The gym is really friendly. It's because I watch, big fan of UFC.
Yeah.
So that's why I thought, hey, why not try it?
And you guys, it's really nice to hear that at the church you guys do activities like this, like you said, table tennis, volleyball, all that sort of stuff. So that's brilliant to do with all the kids. So what's next for you? Is are you going to be father, Andre?
Oh, God knows.
Yeah, God does know.
What do you mean by father? Like a parent, or?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But what's your focus moving forward? Like, you want to obviously continue your great work at the church.
Yep.
Anything you'd like to see happen in terms of our community, like something new?
Well, in our community, we definitely need more priests. But I don't personally think I'll become a priest, but it would be great for young ones to step up and become a priest. But I think, having said that, I think what's an important thing is a lot of our parents and our, aunties and uncles, they have this connection between being holy and priesthood. Like if you're holy, then you got to be a priest. And there's nothing in between. Either you're a working person that doesn't come to church, or you're a priest. I think there needs to be more people, more of the lay people that are married, have kids, that are involved in the church. And, just because, like, for example, soon me and a lot of the other youth are becoming sub-deacons, and before the level before sub-deacons.
Yes.
Just because you are the part of the faith or anything doesn't mean that if you don't become a priest, you weren't successful, or doesn't mean that, you know, there's room for everyone, and you can always play your part. There's always room to contribute in the society. So that's one thing I don't like about the community, is that the first thing they ask you if they see you even wearing a cross is you should become a priest, like as if you don't become a priest, you failed. Do you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, it's great being a priest, and we definitely need them. But a priest is a one-man job, but we need an army as Christians. You know, we don't need the one sergeant. We need one priest alone. 2 priests, 3 priests can't really do nothing. But when you have a priest that has a community behind his back, a team behind his back, people that are willing to put their hands up, this priest all of a sudden becomes really strong, and that's when you start to change the world.
100%, dude. Like, people have asked me, like I said, outside of community, who aren't Iraqis or maybe Aussies or whatever, Americans or whatnot. They've asked me, what's church like over in Iraq compared to here? Yep. And I think you guys experience it in Melbourne, and even the guys who live in Sydney do. But I remember even being in Al Kosh, you know, when I was 5-6 years old, and the church was actually the center, the heart of the community. Exactly. Everyone everyone flocked to the church, and people sometimes would go daily. Yep. You know, they'd show up in church, and everything was centered around it, the activities and everything. And the whole town was, in my opinion, holy to that degree. You know, it's not perfect. It can never be perfect. Yep. But it had that, and you could definitely call that a community, but you could call it an army of, I suppose, faithful people. And I think more than ever right now, that's what the world needs.
100%.
No, more people.
You say that.
Hey?
It's interesting you say that, because, you know, one thing that I always have at the back of my mind running a youth group, obviously with the other leaders, is listening to my parents and what they said about how they grew up in their churches, which is exactly what you said, and other older friends of mine that came from Iraq or maybe Lebanon or Syria, and they say the same thing. And so I try put that as my goal, try and replicate that as best as possible. It's very hard. I don't think I'll ever, you know, you shouldn't say never, but it would be very hard to replicate, especially because, like I said before, it is a secular world. But that's always the target. Like try and get that, because you're exactly right. Everyone was community centered, and that community was the church.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember when I went to a seminar. I think it was about it was a fundraiser, and Peter Costello's brother spoke there, and he's in charge of World Vision.
Yep.
He actually said something, because it was at a church in Brisbane. He said the measure of a church, I mean, is the impact that it has on its community. It's he said you see some churches and it's just a building that everyone knows it's a church, but it doesn't do anything. People just go there Sunday, that's it. And then you see other churches change an entire community, and even a whole, sometimes, nation. You know, people flock to it. Well, look, man, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much.
It's good. It's awesome to talk to a young person who's you know, highly involved in the church and doing great things. I've got a really good recommendation from our good friend Mikho to talk to you. And now I can see why he.
I'm gonna kill him. Don't worry.
No, that's why you could dump someone else in next time. That's all good. But yeah, I'm really pleased also to hear what's going on in Melbourne. You know, the fact that the community is coming back together. You guys can do church. I asked Mikho this last time, but is church still at the restrictions in Melbourne, or what's the deal?
So the recent restrictions was 150 in the building, but we have 2 hall. So we've got the church and we've got a hall. So I think we can do 150 in the church, 150 in the hall. I don't know what's going to happen this Sunday or next Sunday, whether the restrictions are going to change, but there has been masses, I think 2. So usually we have a 8:30, 10:30, 12:30 mass on a Sunday. And so there's been 2 masses for each one. So there's an opportunity for people to go to church that haven't throughout the entire lockdown.
Awesome. And that's changed, hasn't it? Because it used to be 100. Is that right?
Well, before the 150, I think it was, I'm not sure. I don't think it was 100. I think it was less than 100. I can't remember.
Okay. So it has gone better.
Yeah. Well, 150 was jackpot for us. We thought it was great. 150 is a good number. We can definitely work with 150. Hopefully that number rises, because especially leading closer to Christmas, I don't think we'll be able to have a Christmas celebration with only 150. Sometimes we hit, over the 1,000 mark. So we definitely need that number to bump up.
And I know the St. Thomas Church in Sydney has been streaming a lot of it online. Is the same happening?
Yeah. So every single day we've had a massive stream online throughout the whole lockdown, and I think we're still having it streamed online. And having mass online was good, but it's nowhere near like attending to church. And same could be said about anything, but especially when it comes to church and receiving the Blessed Sacrament, it's very important.
Absolutely. All right, brother. Well, again, thanks so much for being on the show. Any last thoughts before we let you go?
Thank you so much for having me, Isaac. It was a pleasure. And thank you for allowing me to share, my experiences in the church.
Nice. And hit me up when you jump up the belt in jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah, man.
To hearing about your black belt whipping.
I don't even have my blue belt. I'm still a white belt. So
That's fine.
Interview me in another 10 years, maybe 15 years, maybe even 20.
That means you're getting coached right, because I know that's another subject, but I know there's a lot of schools that just give out belts like it's going out of fashion.
Yeah.
You've got a good teacher if he's not rushing you.
Yeah, he's really good. He's awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, brother. God bless. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, man.